Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone, your journey, our passion, and by Chevrolet. Chevy runs deep.
This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy, episode 164 for September 7th, 2012. Let a broker buy your next car. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time or 2200 GMT. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or by following the links on our website.
Peter D.
Johnny.
I'm here, man.
You are. I am too.
Yeah.
Again.
Again.
Again and again. You've seen. Never mind. That's a local. It's a local thing.
Right. And we got Steve Finlay with us from Ward's Dealer Business. Good having you here too.
Thank you.
And we've got Steve with us because we got a guy named Isaac Bouchard who will be joining us later in the show, who's a car broker. A part of the business I find fascinating, you know, where you go hire a broker to go find you a new car. So we'll get into that later. But how about this ALMS Rolex Series merger in racing, sports car racing in America?
How much time do you want to spend on it?
Well, you've been talking about doing something like this since we started the show.
Actually a column I wrote in October of 2011, which I put at the bottom of Fumes, which is the motorsports column that I do, was very influential with certain people on both sides of the ball. And I actually proposed a unified schedule at the bottom, which is very close to what they're going to do, except the Circuit of Americas in Austin is missing, and that'll probably be in there. Mm-hmm. Well, the thing came down to this. Just as the manufacturers sort of got NASCAR in a headlock and said, look, you know, you guys have to change the car tomorrow or we're going to have to reevaluate. They got the message, and that's why the 2013 NASCAR cars are going to look much more production.
Mm-hmm. A good first step, I say.
Yeah, a good first step. And there was subtle pressure given to both sides from the manufacturers, you know, look, we can't. I mean, we're doing it now, but the likelihood of us willing to keep both series afloat, probably slim and none in the future. So, and then another development happened when the ACO, which is the French organizing body of Le Mans, told Don Panos that Petit Le Mans would no longer be on the international championship. And, you know, let's face it, Don Panos has done so much for sports car racing. I mean, the guy's probably spent $120 million of his own money over the last 12 years on the ALMS. Mm-hmm. And I think that just said, you know what, we got to go our own way here. We have to not worry so much about what they're doing and come up with a unified series. So he and Jim France started meeting in January. And, you know, they found a lot of common ground. And I spoke with Don for about 20 minutes on Monday, and he just said, you know, we agreed on basically everything, and the time was right. They've been talking since January. It didn't break until Saturday when they were all at Baltimore. The rumor came to the fore, and then I talked with Don and got a lot of the details that were kind of left out. But it's, you know, it's right now, it's a positive by far, because I know for a fact some manufacturers who were not interested in getting involved in American sports car racing are now interested. You know, they're going to have a unified schedule. They're going to have a which starts with Daytona and goes to Sebring, which is the traditional sports car schedule in the United States. They're going to have a unified schedule. What does that mean? That means a TV package. For the first time, there might be bidding involved on a sports car racing TV package in the United States.
Which has never happened.
Yeah, unheard of. So there are a lot of positives. Things could go wrong, but they've got 15 months to get it right. And, NASCAR Grand Am did buy ALMS out.
Oh, is that right?
All the assets, yes.
Oh, interesting.
Including Road Atlanta and the lease on Sebring.
Wow.
But Jim France, the head of Grand Am, is going to be chairman. Don Pano's going to be vice chairman. Scott Atherton, who's really runs the day-to-day of the ALMS, is going to be president. So, and they've got 15 months to get it right before January of 14, when they will be a unified series at the Daytona 24-hour. Next season, they're both going to run their series. They don't have a name yet. I wouldn't be surprised if International Sports Car Racing wasn't one of the names that floats around.
But whose rules are they going to follow? I mean, the cars themselves will end up being what?
Well, prototype, LMP one's going to go away. So that means the Audis, the diesels, whatever, that they're going to go away. So they're going to blend LMP2, the Grand Am Daytona prototypes, and the Delta Wing.
Whoa.
Which is going to be kind of interesting because in some tracks, the P2 cars are 4 to 5 seconds a lap faster than the DPs, Daytona prototypes. So I think they'll just stuff a big block in those DPs and fix that real good. GT, they keep saying the best road racing in the world right now is the GT Series and ALMS. That's going to stay the same, remain intact. Now, Jim France made it clear that there's going to be room for his Grand Am, they call them their Rolex GT cars, which are tube frame cars and not as sophisticated. Again, unless they do a 2-tier GT series, if they try to equalize those cars, then they're going to put big blocks in those too, because there's no way they can compete against all the development that goes into the Porsche, Corvettes, BMWs, Ferraris.
Right. And that is a great series, as you said.
Yeah. And all the rest of the stuff that's run in ALMS and ALMS is going to go away, and the support series that Grand Am uses now will probably remain. The Grand Am Cup, that'll probably stay as a support race. But right now it's all positive.
I would say, well, look, we had the schism between Champ Car and Indy Car.
No,
and it was a disaster. Right. And it still hasn't recovered.
No.
But it's a whole lot better than it used to be.
Yeah. Randy Bernard's done a fine job, but I actually think this unified sports car series is going to hurt IndyCar.
Ooh, I could believe it.
Yeah, because, you
have much more manufacturer participation.
Yeah, and one key thing about the 12-race schedule, one of those races can be dropped. Like if you have a DNF or bad points thing, or if you get an invitation to Le Mans. So I think it's going to be good. So in the next 14, 15 months, Scott Atherton and his counterpart at Grand Am are going to hammer out these rules and regulations. And, a lot of the manufacturers are chomping at the bit to make sure that those rules are right for all concerned.
Well, I think it's great.
The Net and the Grand Am Sonata release, and I couldn't disagree with them today, the ultimate benefit of all of this is the racing fan. I really believe that.
Well, think about it. You're going to have much more sponsorship money for the cars that are there, like what you're talking about. Imagine that. Television networks bidding to get the coverage of that. So from a money standpoint, it's just going to make it easier for at least the teams that make the cut and are able to race.
And they'll cherry pick the best races. And if you take a look at my proposed unified schedule, you'll get a good idea what they're going to end up with. And like I say, the Circuit of Americas in Austin will be in there and somewhere. But you'll get the best races from both series. You have, everything right in the racing world and sports car racing world in the U.S., but you go to Daytona, and then you go to Sebring 6 weeks later, a month later. It's going to be good.
Like the old days.
Yeah, like the old days.
Right. Let's see, what else is going on? Steve Finlay, what have you been doing?
Well, I was going to say, I hope you weren't going to ask me a question about racing, because I've been to one Indy race, one NASCAR race, and one Motorsports Hall of Fame dinner. So
that's okay. I mean, if it were up to John, I mean, we would do a sub after hours.
Yeah, just about racing.
Really after hours. It'll just be about racing, but we
Yeah.
not enough time in the week to do that.
But does Indy, it seems like I've heard before, everybody seems to be wanting to go after Indy. Is that the quintessential race? That it seems to be what everybody is interested in targeting?
Yeah, there are considered 3 major races in the world, and then a 4th that's kind of 4A or 3A. The Indianapolis 500 is still the greatest single motor race in the world, still acknowledged as such, even though it's had some hard times. 24-hour Le Mans, the Grand Prix of Monaco, Formula One race, and the Daytona 500. Mm-hmm. Those 4 races are considered the premier events, but of all of them, Indy is still the single race that every race driver, no matter what nationality, wants to win.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't care about the rest of the championship. They want to win that race.
Yeah.
And again, it's got so much tradition and heritage to it. Over 100 years. It's just amazing since the race started. There hadn't been 100 years of racing. There were some uncertain areas during World War II.
Well, after World War II, the track was in complete disrepair, and the Homan family, Tony Homan, bought it and resurrected it year after year. But 2016 is the 100th anniversary of the Indianapolis 500.
Well, it started in 1911.
Yeah, I
right?
know, but it's the 100th race.
Oh, the 100th race. Yeah.
We've had anniversaries going on since 2011. That was the 100th anniversary of the first race, but 2016 will be 100 races.
Yeah, and Honda's still big in the Indy series, and that's my segue to talk about the Honda Accord, which I drove several weeks ago or a month ago or something like that.
And you were embargoed not to...
Well, I'm still embargoed on any kind of driving impressions, but I think I can say it's a pretty good car.
Always has been.
Always has been.
Always has a styling problem, it seems, over the years. I don't know if they've figured that one out
you
yet.
nailed it. I mean, they said something very curious. They said, we don't really care about having the best styling or the best fuel economy. Which is like great. They say we want to have the best overall car. Okay, I buy that. But man, you talk to every other single car company, and styling and fuel economy they say that's what customers say is number 1 in their book. Styling and fuel economy. And I still think styling, that's never changed.
I bet you whoever said that wishes he could take those words back, because I don't think that's a good way to
I don't think it's a good way.
Or what it usually means is you don't have the best styling and you don't have the best fuel economy.
That's exactly what it means.
Well, I think they're tired of getting in front of the media every time and having that question.
Yeah.
What, really? You guys, do you bother doing design, or you just kind of, it's too bad.
Well, look, I know some of the designers there, and I think they're terrific. But as we've talked about on the show before, it's what management wants.
Yeah.
Toyota did boring stuff until they woke up and realized we better do good stuff. And, we had that Avalon here a week ago, and that's a pretty damn good-looking car. And it's the same design team.
Sure.
And it's, again, we've seen that at GM, we've seen it at Chrysler, we've seen it at Ford, and all the car companies. It's what management wants. But to your point, Steve, this new car, I mean, you've got to be a hardcore Honda Accord cognoscente to recognize what are the new styling cues on this car. It looks so much like the old one.
But you said the interior is better?
Look, the whole car is better. It is a good car. There's no question about it. And I think they're going to sell hundreds of thousands of these things. I think their target's like 300,000 a year in the U.S. market. I don't think there's any problem of them hitting that.
Is it improved?
Well, now you're getting into driving impressions. But I can say, it is. But they've done some things that I think hardcore Honda enthusiasts are not going to like. They've gone away from double wishbone suspension.
In the front,
and gone with McPherson struts.
They did that on the Civic, and they were like apoplectic in Honda Nation.
Right.
Why'd they do that?
Well, they claim that it reduces vibration, which I do agree. I think it can, because when you have double wishbones, there's a lot of bits and pieces all moving together, whereas a McPherson strut is just like a shock absorber with a spring on it. You know, there's not a whole lot to it. And they claim they cut like 15 pounds out of the suspension going that route. And that's good. That's all to the good. And, you know, I got to be careful with what I say because of the embargo, but the car drives fine. I mean, the average Honda Accord buyer is just going to go, oh, it's the car I've always loved, but it's just a little bit better all the way around. The one thing I do want to talk about is they've got a hybrid that is unlike any other hybrid out there. It's a plug-in, so you get 10 to 15 miles pure EV mode. That's their claim. We were not able to get in the car enough to be able to verify it. Then, once you go through the pure EV mode, it goes into its hybrid mode, but it becomes a series hybrid, like the Chevy Volt, where the engine is not going to the drive wheels. All it does is run a generator to provide electricity to run the thing in hybrid mode. And then it runs in what they call engine mode, where the engine is connected to the wheels, but still gets electric assist. So it becomes a parallel hybrid at that point. So it's a series hybrid and a parallel hybrid and a plug-in hybrid.
Wow.
And one of the beauties of it is they've gotten rid of the transmission as part of this. So I think they probably did it to get around other people's patents and as a way to maybe cut the cost of the overall system. They haven't priced it. They haven't announced the fuel economy yet. And it will be built in Japan only. It's not going to be built here. But a very intriguing hybrid system that they've got there.
That is. And, you know, a company like Honda would probably be able to pull that off. Otherwise, that sounds awfully complicated in terms of execution, and some other automaker might have some quality issues with that.
Maybe. You know, Honda's done a whole bunch of different hybrids. Remember, in the U.S., they actually beat the Prius to the market, that little two-seat Insight. Toyota beat them in Japan, but Honda got it here before Toyota got the Prius here. So they've been building hybrids for a long time, but they've not been very successful in selling them. I mean, as we've talked about here, it's the Prius or nothing. I mean, when it comes to sales, other hybrids do pseudo okay. And speaking of that,
plugins.
Well, the plugins are just hitting the market.
We shall see with the new C-Max from Ford. That's a major, major development.
Which is, but that's just, that's only hybrid. You can't get a non-hybrid version.
Or it's a plug-in.
Right. But speaking of hybrids, we reported on Autoline Daily this week, it looks like GM's going to dump their two-mode hybrid, which I thought was a brilliant engineering design, you know, where they packaged the entire hybrid system, not including the batteries, in the automatic transmission. I
did too, and other manufacturers bought into it too.
Well, remember, Chrysler and BMW also were going to share in that. And then I don't know what happened. Well, Chrysler, we know what happened. They went in the tank, and they didn't even build any of the things. Actually, I take that back. They did build a few Durangos and Aspens with the two-mode hybrid, which they put in the press fleet. So I got to drive the thing. But I don't think they'd ever hit the showroom. And then Chrysler went just about belly up. And then I don't know what happened with BMW, but you know, BMW now has a technical agreement with Toyota. And remember, GM used to have technical agreements with Toyota and BMW. Now I don't think it has anything with either one. But these two-mode hybrid vehicles, they could not give them away. I mean, sales have been abysmally bad.
Because they had a whole bunch more on the sticker, right?
They did. I mean, a Silverado hybrid was $17,000 more than a base Silverado truck. Now, that's not accounting for different equipment and all. I'm just looking at price to price. But I think what it comes down to is truck buyers just don't care. You know, they really
You're
don't.
absolutely right. The demographics are off on that. Anybody buying a Silverado is not interested necessarily in a hybrid. Somebody buying a Prius or a small car like that, you know, is. And they're willing to pay the premium, although that market itself is limited. But a Silverado, I mean, give me a break.
And the hybrid gave you, like, over a base V6, like 4 more miles per gallon. And I think over a V8 it was 5 miles per gallon. Well, I suppose if you're a fleet owner and, you know, you're really watching your costs and all, maybe you could justify it. But
Yeah, maybe that.
at an extra 17 grand a pop, I'm not sure that you would ever be able to pencil the number.
Put a turbocharged V6 in there like
Yeah.
Ford did with the F-150, and the take rate will be great. But a hybrid, you know,
Yeah,
just
I mean,
goes
Ford's
against
at
the
almost,
demographics of-
Almost 50%.
Almost 50%. And I want to say that they're charging like an extra $2 grand for the engine, or $1,800.
It's significant.
It's a lot of money, and so for Ford, it's raking in a lot of money. But yeah, to your point, you know, pickup buyers, they want the power, they want a tow, they want a haul, and I'm sure the 2-mode was pretty good, but it was just too damn expensive. So
how's... Oh, we need to take a break. Then I want to ask you about the Boss 302.
well, let's talk Boss 302, then we'll take a break. Then we'll get Isaac on. But
How is it?
what a car. I mean,
It looks great.
It looks just like the Bud Moore paint jobs of the late 1960s Trans Am series.
1970 and 71 and 72.
I like the way you segue from these fuel-sipping hybrids to that.
To this monster car. And I swear to God, when you fire it up and start rolling, you feel like you're on a pace lap for a Trans Am race. You're getting ready to just go. The exhaust note is loud. Now, if you're just cruising, it's fine. But once you step into the throttle,
It's got
man.
the dual mode exhaust,
Right. And it just opens up. 6-speed manual with a short throw. I mean, this thing's pretty good. And they've got the pedals where it's relatively easy to heel and tow with it. But it's a brute of a car. I mean,
Where were you driving it, John?
Where?
Yeah.
Well, I drove it here today. No, I mean, this is just one of the
I thought
test
you were on
cars
a
that I've
track.
got. No, I'd love to get that on a track. No, I only got into it yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, I've been doing some driving around, but I haven't had a real chance to. I've gotten on it, but I mean, really go out and haul ass around and see what the thing will do. I haven't had quite that chance yet. But, you know, my comparison instantly goes to the Camaro ZL1. And I like everything about the Mustang, but that ZL1 just rides better thanks to the MR suspension. That stuff is worth its weight in gold. And the Camaro's got independent rear suspension. Remember Al Oppenheiser making such a big deal about that here. And that Mustang, yeah, you know, you get on our crummy, bumpy roads here in Michigan, and I'm not saying you'll get axle hop under hard acceleration, but if you're cornering hard and you start hitting bumpy pavement, that axle will lift up and move over. So I hope the new Mustang, the next generation, goes with an IRS. And I hope they do something in shock valving. Even if they don't go with MR shocks, I hope they go with some sort of shock valving. Because right now, to me, the nod goes to the Camaro. I think they've got it. And I'm not putting down the Mustang. It is a blast to drive. It will instantly change your attitude. I don't care how bad a day you've got going. You get in that car, you fire it up, you hit an open patch of road and some nice turns, and the world suddenly gets better.
Yeah, you're right. They're both great cars, but it's ironic because for years, for decades, Camaro chased Mustang, and now it's flipped.
Well, it's flipped in sales, and
That's what I mean.
I think
Yeah.
the next gen Mustang will
we'll flip it again.
Flip it
again.
And that's the battle. I mean, Camaro should be in the lead right now. It's the newest car, you know, the freshest design, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It better be ahead of the Mustang right now. But I agree, Peter. I would think when the next gen comes out. Although, remember, Al Oppenheiser said a very interesting thing. He said he was actually pleased that Mustang would beat them with the next refresh because that would allow them to see which way Ford's going and react accordingly. You know, is Ford going to go retro? Is it going to go way out in some new design or what? So I love this kind of healthy competition.
Yeah.
This is what makes the business fun.
Well, and I'm waiting for the Boss Hybrid to come out too.
I just hope the hybrid has retro rockets, and that's the hybrid part of it.
Want to appeal to the muscle car Echo crowd.
Well, remember, there's a step up from the Boss. There's the Laguna Seca edition,
yeah.
and that's the next thing I got to get in, because as fun as this 302 is, the Laguna's edition's got to be.
Well,
just
it's got
a step
that
above.
big splitter on the front, and you really can't drive it on the street much because, well, not here.
Right.
I mean, you'll wreck that splitter in no time.
Right. You would. So those are my thoughts on the Boss.
Cool. Well, it looks good.
Well, hey, let's take a commercial break right now. We'll get Isaac on the show, and we'll talk about should you use a broker to buy a car. Ben, let's give a shout out to our friends at Bridgestone. Yeah. Well, Isaac Bouchard, welcome to Autoline After Hours.
Thanks for having me, John.
So Isaac, as people probably know, has been a correspondent for Autoline Daily. He's done some great work with us, but in your real life, you're a car broker.
That's right.
And I never even knew such a thing existed. So for nobody that's heard, what's a car broker?
Sure. So a car broker, at least to my mind, is like a combination of a buyer's agent in real estate and a personal shopper. And there are people who do it differently, but this is the way I've done it.
And a personal shopper being somebody who would go to a store and actually buy clothes or other things for you, right? Because some people may not even know what a personal shopper is. That's why I throw that
I
in.
don't. Yeah.
But there's enough people who want to hire somebody like you to buy a car for them? Why?
So the three reasons would really come down to saving time, money, and hassle. Let's face it, I mean, what's our favorite thing to do? Buy a car. What's the least favorite thing to do? Buy a car. Right? When they do surveys on it, they
We
don't-
want to
going
get
the
a car,
dentist-
but we don't want to go through
Yeah.
the process of buying it.
Yeah, a dentist is like the worst thing. No offense to any dentist, but when they survey what are your least favorite things to do, and number two is buy a car for most people. But they want to own a car. So with somebody like me, they don't have to have that hassle involved in it.
See, I'm into cars myself. I do all my own research, if anything I'm going to buy or whatnot. So, I mean,
Right.
okay, you said, no hassle, save time, lower cost, but how do people get the trust to come to you to say, I know you're going to get me a good deal on the car I want?
You bet. So I've done this for a little over 20 years, somewhere between 20 and 21 years. And when I started, we had a credit union. I went to work at a company that had a contract with a credit union, and the loan officer would approve their loan and say, this person will help you get your car. That's where it began. I've been on my own for 15 years. It's all repeat and referral business. I've got somewhere around 750 loyal clients who, once they've experienced this, the frequent thing they say to me, John, is, wow, I didn't know there was such a thing, man. I never want to buy a car like I used to. And so every 3 years, what do people usually get? Another car. So here's how I look at it. Even if you know cars, and you know cars, John, like few people do, the majority of people don't. And despite all the information available on the internet, dealers are per car making the most money they've ever made. They make the most money in the F&I box. We call it the box. In the F&I office, the finance and insurance office, they're making the most money they've ever made per customer now, despite all the information available on the internet. So you may know all about cars, but you go in as a consumer on average every 3 to 4 years, and you sit across from somebody who, on average, sees 20 people a day, 6 days a week, and is the highest paid and most successful salesman in the dealership. That is the F&I manager. So I think there's a little bit of a discrepancy in skills there. I help address some of that. Now, if you had a great experience buying your last car, let's say you bought a Boss 302 Mustang, what are the chances you will buy another Boss 302 Mustang the next time?
Probably not going to happen. Try something else.
But even if you did, what are the chances that if you had a good salesman you liked the first time, that you'll find that salesman again?
Probably not going to be there.
Okay.
The
And
turnover is so high is what you're
the
getting
turnover
at.
is over 80%. So I have clients I've worked with for literally 15 or 20 years. I think about meeting their needs, making sure I have a paycheck, making sure we're both happy, because the chances are excellent. They're going to trade in the car they got from me in 3 years, and I'm going to sell that car again. I've sold the same cars 3 and 4 times. So I'm going to make sure if they're looking at a used car that the car hasn't been in an accident that's undisclosed. You know, people think Carfax solved everybody's problems, and it didn't. Carfax is a service out there that will tell you some of the history on a car, but only things that were reported to Carfax end up on the report. So in my experience, a car with what we call a clean Carfax says it's never had an accident. 35–40% of them have been painted, either a lot of the car, all the car, or some of the car. The average consumer is not going to know that, but I can look at a car and tell if it's been painted in 1 or 2 minutes. So I can pass on some of those skills, make sure we get somebody a good used car that'll serve their needs. 3–4 years later, the car comes back, I might sell it again. But it doesn't matter what they want. They need a $5,000 car for their kid going to college. They need a new car for themselves. I can help them.
You know, one thing I've learned from covering the retail side of the business is that customers are so diverse. Some want a dealership person coming up to them as soon as they walk into the dealership. Others resent it. Some want to talk to the salesman. Others want to find their own way. You know, people like you on the internet, they don't need a salesperson to be a consultant. So I can really see a need for somebody in a particular niche that just does not want to go through all that stuff. Doesn't have the time to do it and doesn't have the desire to go into a dealership. And if it isn't the best dealership around, make it an unpleasant experience. But my question to you is, how much pushback do you get from dealers in your job of representing somebody that doesn't want to go into a dealership?
That's a great question, Steve. When I started in the business 2 decades ago, salesmen would give me grief when I came in, and most dealerships would not work with brokers in Denver, where I live. And Denver has per capita more brokers than anywhere else in the country. We are one of the 2 or 3 biggest markets for brokers. There's more
Really? Why is that?
Anywhere.
You know?
There's laws that were passed in a lot of states by the dealership groups to outlaw brokers. Michigan apparently is one of them. And it's a way for them to protect their interests, if you ask me. Now, I'm going to have a biased view on this, but from my perspective, they're going to protect their own interests. Most of us do. So there's not that many states we can work in. This came up, and I'll come back to what you were saying, Steve. This came up with Scott Painter and TrueCar, which was going to change the nature of the car business. And for those people who don't know, TrueCar was a website that was designed to be a new way to sell cars. And it grew and grew and grew, and he had a huge deal with Yahoo, $50 million a year, and he went and he bought ALG Guide that determines lease values on cars. He did all this stuff, and then it all kind of came crumbling down around him because he was in violation of all these laws on how to sell cars in a lot of states.
Yeah, I think with Scott, he was going to change the car business, and I think the car business actually changed. TrueCar is changing it as we speak.
I would agree. So back to your point. Now, here's what's really interesting is the car business on the retail side, and you would know this, has changed dramatically, where a lot of what a dealership is paid is based on volume. They have things called stair-step incentives, where the more cars they sell in a month, they get a retroactive bonus on all the cars they sold. So they may be willing to sell a car at a little bit lower price just to hit that bonus and get, say, $500 on every unit they've already moved that month or that quarter. Because of that, a broker like me becomes an advantage because I'll help them sell more cars even at a lower profit. Because basically, I've pre-negotiated the deal or negotiate the deal for the consumer. And as an example, I'll sell the car at $500 over invoice and no dealer handling. And they get all the rebates, they get all the incentives, they get everything as if they went to the dealership, but they didn't spend 3 hours beating their head against the wall trying to get to $500 over invoice. I got it with a phone call.
So are you negotiating with the dealer?
Most of my dealers not anymore because I've used the same people at the same dealers for over a decade.
Okay.
Occasionally I'll have to. I'll be like, is that all you got? Come on, I need a little bit more, and they'll give it to me if they can. And if they can't, they won't, because supply and demand still apply. I just sold the first, apparently what will be the first Audi Q5 hybrid in the state of Colorado. Sticker price is sticker price. I saved him $500 dealer handling. I'll help him get more on his trade. That's one of the other areas I help people because I'll shop their trade to a couple hundred people. So if one person wants to give me $500 more for that trade and then another, well, that's $500 more in your pocket because what are the chances that the dealer who gives you the best price on the new car will give you the most for your trade-in? Okay, so there's 3 areas you really save on. You save on the financing, you save on the new car, and you save on the used car if there is one. Those are the areas that I try to help people out in. But what I ran into, and after you do this a lot of years and you have a lot of clients, you hit a glass ceiling where you can't sell any more cars in a month. Or you can, but I'm not willing to work more than 6 days a week on average and 8 or 10 hours a day. And so about 2 years ago, I thought, this is really interesting. There's all this information spread diffusely across the internet on how to buy cars, but I kind of know all about buying cars, whether it's buying it at the auction or selling your car on Craigslist, or how to look for paint work when you're appraising a car at a dealership. I know all this stuff. So I thought, well, the internet's out here. It's kind of reached a maturity point. I've heard about these ebook things, and I tried to take all that data that was sloshing around in my brain after 20 years and put it in an ebook in a format that people could access. So that was what I spent my free time doing over the past year or so.
And you have a lot of tips on how to buy a car, what to do and whatnot in your ebook. And one thing because I went through it and I found interesting is prepaid maintenance, where you can pay ahead of time for your car over the length of the loan to have all the maintenance taken care of, which conceptually to me just sounds like another dealer ripoff. But you're actually a proponent of this.
Depending on the brand. See, everything's specific. And you can't make too many generalities in the car business. I think you gentlemen will
Well, in
agree.
your book, you said for Audi, it was actually a good idea.
Yeah,
to do.
so BMW gives you free maintenance when you buy a new BMW. Audi doesn't. But you can buy something called Audi Care for about $800, depending on the model, that will prepay about $1,500 in maintenance. So why wouldn't you do it? Above and beyond that, if you lease the car, they increase your residual value on the car 1 point, which lowers your cost of Audi Care because you're not paying for all of it. You're paying for
And
some
why do
of it.
they raise the residual? Because they know that it's going to get maintained?
They know the car will be maintained. They know it'll bring more at auction when they're done with it.
So like you said, BMW, they're already going to give you the maintenance, so you'd be
And
crazy
Volvo.
to pay for it. But,
Right.
So are there some prepaid maintenance plans that are not worth going into?
I would say on a mainstream car, because they are so reliable, I don't recommend them to any of my clients. What I try to do is educate them in terms of what you should do for maintenance. In fact, the next blog post I'll do, which I've already written the draft of, is on the service experience. And what's happened is cars are so much more reliable than they ever were that the service departments were losing revenue because cars weren't breaking as much. So they were trying to find ways to increase their revenue stream. So one of the ways to do that was start padding what the manufacturer says you have to do with other things. Flushes of your coolant system more often than not, fuel injection, cleaning, things like that were, in my opinion, superfluous. So I'm writing a blog post that explains to people, you know what, there's a very well-researched service schedule in your owner's manual, and it'll tell you exactly how to maintain the car. And if the service writer at that dealership wants you to do more than that, I would probably tell them no. So that's one of the ways you try to save people some money.
Yeah, the prepaid maintenance and the extended warranty agreements really does depend on the manufacturer. And I was talking to a finance and insurance guy from a Honda store, and he said it's very difficult to sell Honda customers on extended warranties because they think their car was made by God, And what do I need a warranty plan on beyond the manufacturers? What's interesting, we just were looking at a study that was done on prepaid maintenance, and the people more likely to buy them are younger people, and I would have thought intuitively it was the opposite, yeah. So.
I don't think they're as mechanically versed as our generations were, right? I mean, my first car came out of a barn and I had to put an engine in it. I don't think that happens much anymore. I don't see it happening with my customers. But the car business as a whole still has a skeevy reputation on the retail side. It's better than it used to be, but it's still there. But the worst area of the whole business would be what is generally referred to as extended warranties, and what should be called service contracts, because they're not extended warranties, but that's what they should be called. And we all call them extended warranties, so let's call it that. That is the worst area. I mean, the entire last chapter of my book is on that because it's such a rip-off prone area that you have to be really careful. Back to Hondas. So most people don't know this because Honda's good at keeping the reputation intact, but pretty much it seems like every Acura TL 2 generations ago would grenade its transmission. I sold the same Acura TL twice. We got it for my grandmother the second time, and the transmission gave up the ghost at 95,000 miles. But I knew Honda had 100,000-mile silent warranty on that transmission. They don't want to jeopardize their reputation with consumers. So you'd slide in there for, you know, your 60,000, and they might slip a new transmission in there. So Honda Pilots, Acura MDXs, Honda's had a lot of trouble with their V6s. Odysseys, almost every Odyssey minivan ever made in the first generation will blow up its transmission by 120,000, 130,000 miles.
Wow.
The clutch packs were weak and stuff like that. So I will tell a Honda person that. And in fact, I just had the same Honda Pilot. I sold it twice, and we got him an extended warranty. They didn't need it. It still only got 68,000 miles. But he had read about it online, about this whole issue with the transmissions, and he said, let's do the warranty because, you know, I don't want a $30,000 repair. And their other car, guess what it is? It's an Odyssey, and they'd put a transmission in it. So,
well, to your point that they're ripoffs, I mean, anybody that is in the business of selling a warranty thinks that they're going to make money off of it. Ultimately, I mean, some people are going to be claiming, you know, making claims on it, and most aren't. So nobody's in the business, whether it's a warranty on a TV set or a car or a radio system, is doing it on the thought that they're going to lose money. So, you know, there's that. But some people swear by extended warranties. And any protection plan. I was talking to a Mercedes is big now on selling wheel protection, and they have a specific type of buyer, people that are very proud of their car and have the money to spend on things. And they were saying that there was this guy in California who lived in the hills of Hollywood, and his commute, he made 5 claims on his wheels, and they paid all 5. And they said they started to think, jokingly, it might be cheaper to go up there and patch that road than to keep paying for his damaged wheels. But, you know, a guy from Mercedes Financial said you have to look at a program in terms of how much you're paying out and how much you're bringing in. And obviously anybody wants to bring in more than they're paying out. So in that regard, it's business rather than, you know, a ripoff. And
to kind of summarize that, the legitimate companies who do that sell an insurance product that is regulated by the state's attorney general. And if it's that type of thing, usually it's legit. But what's out there predominantly on the internet are what are called risk retention groups. And a risk retention group is basically $250,000 minimum stuck in a bank account, probably in the Cayman Islands somewhere. And they start printing contracts and selling them. And they sell as many as they can, and once the claims start coming in, when they run out of money, they close the thing down. And I've had customers who have had that happen to them. So that is probably 60 to 70% of what's out there right now. So that's what gets people. It's basically a giant Ponzi scheme. But a true legitimate insurance product backed by a real insurance company that's been in business 30, 40 years, you know, that you can stand behind, and it's out there. It makes it 10%, right? Because they have their ratios, their loss ratios, and the one we offer, we have a company we offer, it doesn't cover cars like BMW M6s, it doesn't cover AMGs, it doesn't cover any Range Rover or Land Rover product because they used to be so unreliable they couldn't make their loss ratios work. And
what is your customer profile, the people that come to you? Are they just rich people that don't want to be bothered buying a car? Or
no, it's interesting. Yes, 25% of my clientele are extremely wealthy at this point. But, you know, over 20 years, you watch your clients go through the life cycle. It's been pretty interesting. The majority of them are normal people like you and I, probably middle income, and they work for a living and they want to save money. You know what? Even the wealthiest people, they want the deal. I found that to be the case. They just want a deal, you know, and it may come down to they want an extra $500 off, and then they'll go and throw $6,000 worth of wheels and tires on that car, but they still want the deal. And then the majority of people want a deal, and they don't want a hassle. They really don't want a hassle. So, you know, what do I sell most of the time? The number one car I've sold is a Subaru over the years, and that's because I'm in Colorado, and that's their number one market, and it suits that market. Probably number 2 forever was Ford trucks. I mean, it is the best seller in the world still, but if you remember when the F-150 and stuff was king, in terms of what, 1 million units a year or somewhere close to that, 800,000 to 1 million. I sold a lot of F-150, 250, and 350 pickups.
Hey, one of the tips that you have in your book is that anybody can learn your knowledge, and is you say you should talk to the fleet manager at a dealership. I thought only fleets could deal with the fleet manager at a dealership.
That's the way it used to be. So pre-internet departments, pre-internet, when I started doing this in '91, there was nobody to talk to but a fleet manager. and we would have a fleet manager contact who had in the past just sold to companies, multiple car vehicles, and our pitch to them as a company was, we will buy 20 or 30 cars a month from you for our clients, so will you give us a pre-negotiated deal or a better deal on all those cars, because we're going to buy 20 or 30 cars a month from you. And most dealerships have a fleet manager. Sometimes it's rolled into the internet department, and sometimes it's broken out. But I find the fleet managers are a little bit nicer to deal with, and that's because the internet departments have almost become synonymous with the sales department. I mean, 95% of all car shopping starts online, and it funnels into an internet department, and then it gets dispersed.
Okay, so an individual probably is not going to get to talk to the fleet manager.
I think you can.
Really?
I think you can, yeah.
And get a better price that way? Get a fleet price, even if you're only buying one vehicle? Mm-hmm. Really?
Because when all is said and done, they want to sell a car. Okay.
But why don't they say, well, just walk down the showroom and go talk to one of the salespeople, the retail?
Because the fleet manager is paid to sell cars. He's not paid to give his leads to somebody else. He wants to sell another car. It could be another bonus. Most of my fleet managers are paid bonuses based on volume. They only may make $100, $150 a car, but they may get $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 a month in bonuses.
You would think that would create total animosity within the dealership staff if somebody is bypassing the salespeople to go to the fleet guy.
Exactly. So here's the only thing that ever happens.
Imagine fistfights breaking out.
Well, so here's what occasionally happens. Is a new customer, a new referral of mine will have gone to a dealership in our market. And I usually will not go back to that dealership because that is considered, it's not considered, they don't want me to do that, basically. It's not respectful, right? If you've come in and you have a relationship with a retail salesperson at Joe's dealership, I'm going to take you to Fred's dealership, same brand of car, but I don't want to be the guy bringing you in the back door when you've already been in the front door. But if your first point of contact is with the fleet manager, they can't say anything about it. And that fleet manager may say, no, talk to the internet department, but there's no reason not to ask for them.
So where can you get your ebook? How can people learn about these car buying tips?
So it's called The Car Buying Tips Guide, self-explanatory, and it's on my website, thecarbuyingtipsguide.com website.
And what's it cost?
$9.95.
Oh,
and it's got a money-back guarantee.
Yeah. But if you get the rollback and pull the ad fund out of it.
And it has an extended warranty.
Well, this is, like I said, I went through the book, and I think there are a lot of good suggestions as to what people should be doing when they go to buy a car themselves. Just a couple of other things. You say if you're going to sell your car, check eBay to see what other cars are actually selling for to help you set a price.
You bet. People will look at Kelly, or they'll look at NADA, or they'll look at Edmunds, but rarely all three, and those numbers never agree. So if you've got the geniuses at these three companies who are paid to figure out what a car is worth, and they can't agree on what your car is worth, value-wise, that tells you that it's more complex than that. And really the only way to determine what a car sells for is to look at what other cars like it have sold for in the market. And eBay, you can look, you can see if it hit the reserve or not, and you can tell what a car may be really worth, so you don't fool yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about used cars. The fascinating thing about used cars is they're all unique. They're all different in some respect, whether it's condition, mileage, you name it. So it's hard for anybody to put an exact value on a used car. There's so many elements that go into it, and almost imponderables as well.
Sellers private sellers, frequently I find will overestimate the value of their own car.
Always.
And they'll call me. I mean, they've been advertising their car and advertising it. No one's been calling on it, and I ask them what it's advertised for, and they tell me, and I'll look at comparative cars, and they're $1,000 over what everybody else's car is. Well, that's your reason.
That's why dealers started putting, blue book, black book, Kelly, right on their website, so people can go to a third party and see what the value of their car is, which often bursts their bubble because before that they'd go into the dealer thinking their car was worth a lot more than it was.
That's so true.
So now you got somebody, a disinterested
I thought my
party.
Belch Fire 8 was worth a lot more.
Hey, let's take another break and get back to do rapid fire because we got a bunch of questions here. But Ben, let's go to our friends at Chevrolet.
It was more than a car to him. It really was his baby.
Oh, no. That's my old Chevy. Dear God.
Okay, this is the rapid fire part of the show. Ben, let it rip. Okay, Peter, Anthony wants to know, what can we, the fans, do to force this new road racing series to accept FIA spec GT3 cars?
Send Scott Atherton a note at the ALMS headquarters in Brazelton, Georgia.
You like the idea, though?
Well, you know, I do like it, but I think if this series really works well, it'll be 2 clear-cut classes, and that's it. If they start having tiers within those classes, they'll screw it up. I mean, this has to be repackaged, reimagined for television. It has to be real clear-cut, because what do I hear most when people who don't know about racing watch the ALMS broadcast? They all say the same thing, wow, it's really interesting cars, but what's going on with all the classes? There's 4 different classes in the ALMS, and they don't understand.
Right.
It has to be swoopy, low little cars and production-looking cars. That's it.
I agree
so
totally.
if they can work GT3 in, fine. But I will tell you that a lot of the European manufacturers who were waiting to see what was going to happen are now very interested because they want to show well in this market.
Isaac, Mike DeWhite wants to know, can dealer processing fees be negotiated?
Yes. It's simple. A lot of states say that if there is a dealer handling charge or a D&H charge or a paperwork or a dock fee, and if they charge it to some people, they have to charge it to everybody. Well, that means they have to show it on their paperwork, and it's usually pre-printed. It'll say dock fee $4.99. That just means when you're negotiating, you bring it up early enough that this is the bottom line price, and it is to include the document fee, or it is to include the dealer handling fee, so you're not hit with it at the end. And the easy way is when you go into the dealership, you'll see little signs that are posted all over the place saying, here's what our dock fee is. So when you begin your negotiations, make sure you tell them that that is to include dealer handling.
There's 2 sides to the dock fees. Dealers say it should be charged because they do a lot of this work. You know, a lot of it's for the government. You know, there's licensing, and the other side is why, from the customer side, is like, why should we pay for you to do your paperwork in the form of a transaction?
Well, the other thing is the margins have been reduced so much that they're trying to make up some of them in the dock.
Exactly.
So
It's the airline's charging for luggage.
Yeah, yeah.
George from Brooklyn wants to know, Isaac, is a late model car a good value, or should I wait for the new or redesigned car? For example, should a consumer buy a late model Malibu or wait for the redesigned version?
Ooh, that's a fun one. So your best values are usually on a facelifted car, right? A car that's gone through its mid-cycle refresh. It's got the latest technology. It's usually more reliable because it's built longer into the production run. Those are usually a better value than the all-new car. And there's usually more available in terms of rebates, incentives, and that's another point is rebates are advertised, incentives aren't, and there's usually a lot of incentives on late model cars getting ready to be closed out, like, say, a 2012 Malibu.
And it also comes down to the difference in customers. Some people are looking for the great deal, and others are looking for the new and the most exciting thing out there.
And he also wants to know, what do you think of people using Craigslist for used cars? And what advice would you give to students interested in buying a car?
So every dealer now has to be on Craigslist. It's that simple. There's 3 main channels you advertise your cars on, because I take our trade-ins and I'm the one who advertises them. It's cars.com, autotrader.com, and Craigslist, okay? And Craigslist is its own market, and you have to work it properly. But basically, there's nothing wrong with a car on Craigslist. Per se, it could be a consumer's car, a private party car, or it could be a dealer just advertising that car. Any used car needs an inspection. I don't care where you find it, unless it's a CPO car that is a certified car, it should be independently inspected. And even if it is a CPO car, I'd have it independently inspected. So on to the next point. A student buying a car, do their research on the model. A lot of it's available online. You'll find the common ailments that model might suffer, and then have it inspected. Spend the $100, spend the $120 for a comprehensive inspection. There are companies, the one that I contract with is AIM. They've been in business for decades. They do the inspections on cars coming off of leases for manufacturers, so they're trusted by everybody. They'll come out, they'll do a complete inspection. They'll even, if you want to spend more, take it in and do an oil and fluid analysis. I think that's the best money you can ever spend, especially if the car doesn't pass the inspection.
I'll give you a Craigslist tip on buying cars. If somebody is offering a car that the guidebooks say is worth $15,000 and they're offering it for $3,000 and you're supposed to send the money to Nigeria, don't buy it. And you'd be surprised they're out there, those
Really?
scams. And Craigslist seems to be plagued by them, probably because it's the most popular of those sites. But you got to be careful. If a deal looks too good, it is probably a scam.
Peter, I'm going to throw this one at you because I don't understand the question fully. It's from Pierre Cardan AMX. And he says, will the Alfa Romeo, which is one size larger, be sold as a Dodge Javelin? I think it got lost in translation.
Yeah. I still think Sergio's really set a difficult bar for himself with this Alfa thing. Mm-hmm. He's made a lot of promises, and he's done a lot of good things, and Chrysler did a lot of good things before he got there, but this Alfa thing and the economic crisis in Europe, which is threatening Fiat's very existence, could be his Waterloo.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he's overestimating the popularity of Alfa here?
Yeah, I do. I mean, as enthusiasts, we all like Alfas, mm-hmm. but he's talking turning it into a mainstream brand, like an Audi. Oh, man. There's a long way between that and Audi.
Right.
It
took Audi 15, 20 years to get back to where they were before the fiasco, right? Of
20 years for 20 years. Hatchet job.
60 Minutes did
lynching that 60 Minutes did.
Yeah. Well, what's the long way? Is it the vehicle quality aspect of it, or just the brand recognition?
Well, I just think, first of all, to launch an all-new brand, and it is an all-new brand, mm-hmm. because to the main group of buyers in the United States, the only Alfa Romeo they know of was in The Graduate.
Yep.
That was in 1967. They know nothing about Alfa. So that's the challenge, too. So that's a $150 million bill right there. That's just to get basic recognition. Mm-hmm. Then the marketing costs will accrue from there. Then they have to bring a product that people actually want and will just accept the fact that Alfa's cool and it's just as good as a Volkswagen, a loaded Volkswagen or an Audi, and it's a tough road. Mm-hmm. And he's made a lot of promises to his dealers. And if you talk to dealers, that's the one thing that they're not happy about.
But he has no choice. He put himself in this situation by the Fiat franchise agreements. That's how you get an Alfa agreement. And a Fiat franchise will probably not make money on its own, so they have to have the Alfas to go with it.
And he's late.
Right.
They're very late.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's the issue that they're facing. Hey, I see we got a couple of phoners. Ben, let's bring the first one in.
Hi, this is C-Tech from Orlando. I've got a quick question for your guest. I was just wondering, does he buy cars at the auto auction?
I can tell you I do get cars from Mannheim, who is the world's largest car auction company, on a regular basis.
Yeah, okay. And let's see here. We got more. Mitch W.
Can I ask
jump in.
Are you allowed to go to the auction and bid?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, you're registered.
I'm registered.
Not anybody can just walk into an auction.
No, so there's two types of auctions. That's a great point. There's two types of auctions. There's one the public can attend, and then there's ones for dealers only. Mannheim's the largest. Odessa's the second largest. And I buy on a regular basis. In fact, for 2 days I've been trying to buy one via the internet for a gentleman, and pricing is so high at the auctions right now, we keep not getting him what he wants.
AAH guest 196 is asking you, Steve, why use a broker when you can use a service like carwoo.com where you can negotiate with dealers anonymously?
Well, that's, that becomes an issue. That's the True Cars model was kind of like that as well, where you didn't know who the dealer was specifically. And you can do that, and you can use a broker. And there's, as I was saying earlier, there's all sorts of different ways to buy a car. And there's all sorts of different personalities involved in buying the car and different buying habits. So people can buy a car any way they're comfortable buying it, but you just have to be careful of who you're dealing with. And
how about that turnover rate? How about that turnover rate, though?
I have an answer to that, though.
At the dealership, you mean?
80%.
Mm-hmm.
But I have an answer to that, and it's a great question. And CarWoo is the new hotness right now, just like TrueCar was. Once you've negotiated it and you're at the dealership, we know that typically more money is made in the finance department. Dealers have become very adept at offering a smoking deal on the internet, and they know that they're still going to make up a significant amount of profit in the finance department. So knowing that, this is my assumption that the deal you think you have and the deal you walk out the door with may not be exactly the same. That's my experience with other companies like CarWoo.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, to me, it becomes the educated consumer, the consumer that knows what he or she wants. If you're in the F&I office and they're presenting products you don't want, then you can say no. I mean, you're not forced to buy these things. And so many people act like, you know, look what they did to me. I mean, no is the answer if you don't want it.
Yeah, it's like drinking that. That's like drinking the hot coffee in the McDonald's drive-thru and suing me. Right. It was hot. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott in Cleveland wants to know, what's the purpose of embargoing a driving impression? Well, I'll tell you, see, these car companies use us in the media as an adjunct of their marketing arms. They really do. So, and they all do it, you know, but I'll use Honda as the example because we were talking about the Accord earlier. They lifted the embargo on everything technical yesterday. So what happened? We who all went and drove this thing, we spilled our guts on. Here's all the technical stuff. So boom, here's this big flurry of Honda Accord articles and reports and whatnot. Next week, the embargo comes off the driving impressions. Boom, here's going to be another flood of articles. So they're getting a twofer out of doing it that way.
They're keeping the Accord name and the Honda name in the media as long as they can.
Now, there is a good reason for having an embargo because oftentimes, if it's a big car like the Accord, they bring in waves and waves and waves of journalists over multiple days. And if it's an international launch, it can go on for literally a month. Yeah. A month of waves of journalists going to usually some nice resort, some nice place in the world. That's why we're in the business, folks. And but so if you're tail end Charlie as a journalist coming in a month after everyone else has seen the car, all these articles have been out there and everything, you're screwed. So the automakers put an embargo on it and then they lift it. So it's a little bit more fair because there's all kinds of shenanigans that go on. But by and large, you know, they have an embargo to try to be fair to all the journalists. So everyone's reports, stories, articles, whatever it happens to be, hits the media at the same time.
Yeah. And
the automakers like it that way too because it's a tidal wave of coverage that just, you know, goes and smothers everything. But good question, Scott.
Well, in the old days, the magazine guys used to get the info early. And then with the you know, the internet, it got to be such a problem that some of the smarter manufacturers said, look, we need to have one day here. And because the car magazines, guess what? They have websites now. So this is all going to have to come to a stop.
Right.
But, you know, the idea of sending a journalist to like the Napa Valley and putting their head in a bottle of Cabernet and have them retain perspective, that's still a time-honored thing. It's hard to retain perspective when you're on your third, you know, Screaming Eagle Cabernet. It's a great car.
And you're such nice people.
Yeah.
They are very careful about not serving the Cabernet before you drive.
No.
That's right.
Those are the dinners after.
Yeah.
You drive and you start, I don't know about the car, and then about the fifth glass of Cabernet. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's right. I don't hear no rattle. Let's see. Mitch W. also wants to know, is there any truth to the story GM is disappointed with the PSA deal, Peugeot Citroën? I don't think there's... What it looks like is there's some caveats to the deal, and we don't even know what the deal is. All we know is that they gave PSA $400 million, and we don't really know what they're getting out of it. So
they're trying to make sure it doesn't turn into a quagmire.
Yeah, and it could.
And it could.
Very easily. Let's see. What else we got? Well, we got another phoner. Let's bring that one in.
Hi, this is Jeff W. from Albany, New York. My question for the panel this week is, if Fiat has to terminate the Lancia nameplate in Europe due to slow sales in the European financial crisis, does that spell big trouble for the Chrysler nameplate? And actually, another quick question is, are you guys going to get Sandy Monroe back on your show anytime soon? He's a great guest.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, we will get Sandy back, because remember the last time he was on here, which goes back well over, maybe 2 years now, he talked about this and brought samples of this new Covetic aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we need to get him back on here and see, because he tells me that stuff is going gangbusters, not necessarily in the auto industry, but in the aerospace and military. Yeah. So,
well, you were saying name recognition of Alpha is not very good over here. The Lancia, I mean, geez, good luck with that. But is he correct in terms of the...
Well, Chrysler cars in Europe are sold as
Lancias, and you know, they've got all kinds of problems going on there. I mean, the European thing has hit Fiat really hard, and obviously Chrysler profitability is propping up the whole thing right now. And you know, yeah, they bring Chryslers over and call them Lancias, but if people aren't buying cars over there, they're kind of dead in the water.
Yeah, absolutely
Fiat's really in deep trouble. I mean, so much trouble that Sergio actually raised the issue of whining about Volkswagen pricing, because Volkswagen's out to bury their competitors now, and saying we should all get together and agree on what's a fair price. Hello? I mean, that's like collusion, but that's how desperate Sergio is about this Fiat situation in Europe. I mean, it could bring the whole thing down, or they'll just have to jettison Fiat and keep Chrysler from going down with it.
Well, isn't Volkswagen using the easy availability of the financial market and credit to be able to incentivize cars?
Yeah, and they're also sort of, it's kind of like what GM did after coming out with Let's Get America Rolling after 9/11, and it should have ended. But then they decide, you know what? This is a marketing strategy. We'll bury them. Well, I think Volkswagen's doing a little of that, except the difference is Volkswagen's got so much money, and they're making so much money.
Well, they can borrow money at such lower interest rates than any other competitors.
And they're getting the costs out of their products to the point where, you know, Sergio's, their Fiat might not make it. You know, it might not make it.
And not just them.
No, not just them.
PSA may not make it.
I mean,
Opel.
You know.
Right.
So, but that's how really threatened Sergio is to even get out in public and saying we got to get into a collusion situation here, or we're all going to go down. It's, what?
Okay, 2 questions here. One for me, one for you, Peter. RTK42C says, John, the new Chevy Malibu has received some bad press lately. Having driven it myself in the Eco trim, I thought it was very good, though I was not able to directly compare it to its competition. Is the Malibu's competition really that much better as the bad press would suggest? I think the Malibu is a pretty good car.
I have a Malibu Eco this week. I think it's an excellent car.
It's extremely quiet.
Yes.
I think it might be the quietest car in the class. And that's just going, you know, by my own seat of the pants feel.
Yeah. And I think people are kind of upset about the design. They think it's a step back from the other car. I don't know if that's true, but I don't get the hand-wringing about the Malibu Eco. I think it's an excellent car.
I think it's fine, yeah. And he also wants to know, Autoextremist, if you were in charge of advertising for Chevy, what would you do?
Chevy Runs Deep would go away, and I would just put all hands on deck to come up with a theme that is worthy of the heritage of the Chevy brand, but not wallow in the heritage, but, you know, you had some of the greatest advertising campaigns in history. You need the next one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's see, what else? We got all kinds of things here. Here's a guy well, maybe I'll get into it. Viper High says, you often talk about autonomous vehicles being the next big step in the auto industry. I know the term autonomous vehicle makes Peter just cringe, as he probably thinks it's the end of driving as we know it. Normally, I would agree with him. That's until I drove the this goes on a bit, blah, blah, blah. He drove a 2013 Mercedes GL 550 on a 300-mile trip. He never touched the brakes or gas. driving in with the Distronic system, which is their adaptive cruise control, from 50 to 70 miles an hour. Only applied minor steering inputs. Well, that's because you're on a straight road. Yeah. Autonomous vehicles are not the future. They're here now. Well, we're Viper High, we're getting there. We're getting there. But I mean full autonomy. And once my enthusiast friends see how the masses go for autonomous vehicles and the roads get better and we enthusiasts can drive much faster than we do right now and not run into construction or congestion, then they'll be for it too. That's my prediction.
Adaptive cruise control is kind of neat, though, if you're going.
But it depends. It's all over the map.
Yeah.
Because, literally, I jump in so many different cars. Mercedes is really good. It'll bring you to a complete stop. Mm-hmm. But I was just in an SL AMG that, man, it waited to the last second to put on the brakes. It about gave me a heart attack every single time. It was
well,
something
some of them
else.
you can adjust that.
You can adjust. Yeah, you can. On most of them, you can.
How close you get to the car.
And I got to say, overall, I think Mercedes has got the best adaptive cruise control system out there. And some will only take you down to like 20 miles an hour. And then they go beep, beep, and they shut off. You better be right on top of it to bring the car to a stop. But it is kind of cool to just follow traffic. And when you come to a stop, the traffic moves again, you hit resume, and the car, it's good. So we're getting there, but we don't have autonomous just yet. Before the decade's out, is my prediction.
Yeah, I keep my hands on the wheel.
Yeah, that's exactly
as
right.
good as the system might be, but it is a step. You're right.
Well, it looks like we've reached the end of the road.
Yeah, I think we have
overstayed our welcome even.
That's right. So, Isaac, great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Very interesting. So, say again, what's your website?
You bet. It's carbuyingtipsguide.com.
Carbuyingtipsguide.com.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Just want to make sure that, and for under $10, right? What'd you say? $9.95.
$9.95.
So, anybody wanting to buy or sell a car, you ought to look into it.
I think there's a chapter in there for you.
And I'll tell you, folks, I did go through it. I'm not going to say I sat down and read it every single chapter, but I skimmed through the thing. There's a lot of good advice in there.
Is that price negotiable?
No, but there's a money-back guarantee. We know some of the car companies have tried that one, too.
And Steve, great having you here,
Thank
too,
you,
man.
Steve.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Isaac, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
guys.
thanks, Peter.
And Peter, good
Always
show.
a pleasure,
yeah.
John.
And then next week we'll have David Leone from Cadillac. And
That should be interesting.
That
Maybe
ought
he'll
to be
bring us
interesting.
an ATS to look at in the studio.
Yeah, I hope he'll do that. We'll have to give him a call and make sure he does.
Or if he wants to bring the CL,
that would even be more
that would
awesome.
even be better.
That wouldn't fit in here.
The hardtop version that nobody but you has seen yet.
Yeah, that's going to be revealed probably in Detroit.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, folks, thanks. We'll see you next week.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone, your journey, our passion. And by Chevrolet. Chevy runs deep.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern. Get your daily news fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There is all that and much more at Autoline.tv.